Is it going to be a happy year for Apple? It feels like it's going to get off to a rough start.
I think it's time to get out the popcorn because, in my opinion, this is the next stage of, I think, the growth phase in Cupertino. And I think, look, if you look what's happened.
How do you factor in this kind of stuff? I can't buy a watch. I need a new watch, and I can't buy it right now.
Look, we're talking less than 1% of disruption from Apple Watch, in terms of in the actual quarter. And I think, look, it just speaks to they're going to have patent issues like this on healthcare. But there's a renaissance of growth on iPhone units, services, double digits. And that's why I think a lot of the bears right now, they're deep in those caves in hibernation mode. I think a year from now, we have a $4 trillion market cap on Apple.
You say the bears had a great fictional story, okay?
A Netflix fictional.
A Netflix fictional story. We all want to be in it.
Not Apple Plus?
I gotta hand it to you. This shirt just screams, full of confidence, full of vigor. But you look at the China story, so make sense of this for us. How do you get to $4 trillion when you still got the government pushing back against Apple products? It was a headline just in December. I mean, is that myth or is that a headwind?
I think it's a headwind, and ultimately my view in terms of China is that I'm not saying it's roses and champagne in Beijing with Apple, but we are seeing growth, and that's something we've seen come out of Asia checks even over the last week, because you have 100 million iPhones in China in the window of an upgrade opportunity. As those upgrade, and look, for Huawei, it's a good phone, but realistically, it's an iPhone 12. I'm saying from an actual functionality perspective. So I do think that it's a headwind they have to contend with, but it is the hearts and lungs of the Apple story, and that's why a lot of the bears at 500 billion, a trillion, trillion and a half, 2 trillion.
Well, they're whipped now, aren't they?
It's all about the China.
3 trillion now.
It's all 3 trillion, I think, going to 4 trillion. It's always about that big bad wolf, the China story, and the actuality, China has actually been fueling the engine.
Well, let's talk about what the bears are saying right now, because they're saying, you think about in terms of the product lineup, that Apple really hasn't had a hit since the AirPods, and that was all the way back in 2016. So you talk about this new growth, but from the product lineup, where is that going to come from?
Well, first off, the install base, it's unparalleled. It's the best install base in the world. So just from an install base perspective, you have 250 million iPhones in a window of an upgrade opportunity. I think that's why iPhone 15 so far, Christmas came early, a strong holiday season. But for 2024, and Gurman's talked about this as well, I believe you're going to have not just new phones that come out from an iPhone 16, but we believe you're going to have the iPhone App Store, which is going to be an AI app store focused on AI apps. That's going to be something that's going to be incremental for services. And I think that's very important. You combine it with Vision Pro, and we believe more and more products coming out, they flex the muscles.
Dan, is there a bear story, though, on Apple? I mean, I think if Tom Keene was here, and I know this is how we feel, we are an Apple family. And when somebody goes to buy something, like, no, sorry, you can't do that. It's got to be an Apple product, because that's been our infrastructure. That's our network.
No green text bubbles, okay? None of that.
Exactly. Although there's an app that I think can pull people. But that installed base, I'm looking at, 2024 revenue estimate of $397 billion.
Sure.
Like, every time the Apple numbers cross, they're off the charts. Even if the growth isn't significant, there's still that installed base is enough to keep a lot of momentum going.
And if Keene was here, would he be focused on? And I think
he kind of is. We just have him under the table.
Keene's here, just like Matt. Like,
I'm an incarnation of Tom Keene now. This is the hologram. I am Keene hologram.
It's an AI. It's AI generated.
Good morning.
But is there a bear story for Apple?
But look, realistically, it's about value. Look, if you look at valuation, you look at the cash flow generation of Apple that we're going to see over the coming years. The EBITDA margins are expanding. Now, I think the bear story, look, a lot of the bears, they just look at their spreadsheets on Park Ave and in their tower saying this is an expensive stock.
So you don't have a bear story for Apple at all?
Because to me, the bear story, it's valuation, it's China, and I think at that point, it's a headwind, but it's more fictional Netflix story than reality that's going to hurt them. And then it's just more competition, but it comes down to valuation. And that's why this year, I think the bears, they focus so much on valuation instead of the actual underlying growth story that's happening not just for Apple, but we believe believe it's the start of a new tech bull market for tech.
I mean, and this is your thesis for next year, which is about, I mean, 2023 was a year in which every time you saw an AI story evolve, Microsoft.
Wait, we were talking about AI this year?
Well, just,
I'm just kidding.
just a little.
AI and Ozempic.
But if
really.
you didn't have yeah, I know. So I tempted by Ozempic rather than the treadmill. But on a slightly more serious note, cloud and AI have been the dominant forces, as well as balance sheets in tech. I put those three together, and let's just put Apple aside for a moment. Cloud and AI. How do I disaggregate who's going to perform well in this? What's going to make a cloud A grade and an AI A grade stock?
Yeah, and I think you hit on what's really a key point. If you look at what's happened with Nadella and Redmond at the top of that mountain from a cloud perspective, now this is more monetization for the hyperscale players, from Microsoft, for Amazon, for Google. We believe for every $100 of cloud spend the last 4 or 5 years, there's 35 to 40 incremental AI spend. That's why I'd say when you look at Microsoft, you look at Google, this is going to be just a new frontier of growth. And then, of course, you have the godfather of AI, Jensen, NVIDIA. This is really just starting what we view as a 1995 moment.
The godfather of AI.
Look, Jensen's
Top
the
performing
godfather.
stock in the S&P 500.
There you go.
But it's the biggest tech transformation in 30 years. Haven't seen it since 1995, start of the internet. And we believe this is actually the beginning of the next phase of this bull market.
I just want to know, are there a million AI ETFs that have all of a sudden come on?
You know,
watch that market, so...
there's a few dozen that were launched way before we started talking about AI around this time last year. But I do want to switch gears here and talk about EV demand, because this has been one of the stories that's really emerged, that it just feels like all of these automakers really miscalculated how much demand there would be for EVs, and now you're seeing those production targets get cut. How does that factor into how you're thinking about Tesla? Is that a bear case for Tesla, or does Tesla just command more of maybe a shrinking pie?
Yeah, Kate, I think that's a great point. Look, right now it's Tesla's world, everyone else paying rent when it comes to electric vehicles. And I think they're doubling down. You look what's happened in Detroit, GM, Ford actually peeling back a little from electric vehicles, some of the foreign automakers. Look, demand's definitely softened. Price wars have come through, but a lot of those storms have now passed. I think for Tesla specifically, unit volume looks strong in China. I think there's going to be a record quarter for China, in terms of Q4. You go into next year, I think demand actually starts to accelerate a bit relative to where people thought. I think for the overall industry, it's still a massive transformation, but now you're starting to maybe peel back a bit in terms of, okay, this is not going to 40% penetration, maybe it's 25, 30.
Dan, 30 seconds. China is the rallying cry of the bears when it comes to Apple. So too when it comes to Tesla. You think about all those Chinese EV makers. How does Tesla compete overseas?
They've done it. I mean, I think a lot of the price war, this was a poker move for the ages by Musk. Cut prices, focus on units. And that's why right now this has been flex the muscles in Beijing for not just Tesla, but of course for Apple, despite bear noise.
Before we started, we showed a piece on drones. Just real quickly, 25 seconds. Is there a drone play for you? I mean, all of the company, Amazon's in it, Walmart's, everybody's in it, and there's individual startups.
Yeah, look, I think that's past. I remember being a CES years ago.
You don't buy it then?
Yeah, I think that's... Look, that's why you have to separate.
Mattis is like, yes.
No, but you separate hype from the real. There's parts of that market that are growth.
Yeah.
But you look at AI, this is the Super Bowl in terms of tech market.
We're going to have a bull tech market in 2025, too?
Well, I think this bull tech market goes, we believe, for another 2 years. That's why right now it's getting the popcorn out.